What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Michael Rommel here to guide you through another 25 kilometers of Zwift racing. This time I take on the Neokyo course around the Makuri Island Zwift route. It's arduous, it's attritional, and with over 60 riders taking part, it was certainly not easy. So without further delay, grab the wheel, grab my draft, and I will guide you through the pack to the finish line. Let's see how the race unfolded. So here we are just going through the arch that takes it into lap 1 and out of the lead-in, of course. Like I mentioned, there's over 60 riders in attendance here. My plan is quite clear. With such a large peloton, is to stay in the group, conserve power as much as possible, and don't do anything too hasty. With 160 meters of elevation, this is a relatively flat course, and the only real single climb of note to speak of is one on the rooftops that's about 30-35 meters. Nothing too much. It's something you should be able to sprint up if you've still got the legs at that point. More on that in just a minute. But right from the bat, you'll see what happens is one guy decides to go off the front. And here we go. Let's just zoom forward to when that takes place. And we're talking like a breakaway, a solo breakaway from the first kilometer or two. It's so early, in fact, that initially I think there's no cause for concern here. This guy is going to get burnt out. He's going to get caught with ease. Here he goes. I speak too soon. Where is he going to go? Is he going to go? There is a breakaway. There we go. There's the guy in the red there. You can see his name just up ahead there. And it does look like he's going to get away. So I squeeze to the front just to keep an eye on what the gap between him and the rest of us is. And it looks initially like it's going out because he's able to maintain around 5.5 to 6.5 watts per kilo for the duration. So what happens here is I decide to take on the chase myself. And let's just see where I start the chase from. So I start the chase from about 2 minutes 30 into the race. I didn't catch the guy for like just over a minute and 15 or something. And if you keep an eye on the power chart there at the bottom of the screen, you can see that I'm well in the red at the moment. So a minute and a half or a minute and 15's worth of chasing, that is burning a match. In fact, that's burning several matches. All I succeed in doing is, rather than catching up to him and then hopefully forming a part of a very small breakaway, is delivering everyone else back onto our wheel. So either, obviously, 2, 3, 4 of us bunch up and that causes some alarm in the group, so they all up their watts per kilo ever so slightly, just so they can catch onto our wheel. And that is exactly what happens here in this garden section. So by this point, after burning a big old match, and then another couple of small matches again in sort of surges, trying to just sort of keep up and not get dropped, the group catch up, and I'm very quickly needing to use my drafting boost to catch my breath and bring that heart rate back down. Now, despite having the drafting boost enabled here, I'm not actually able to do that. Momentarily, I was able to get my heart rate down to 163, but it sort of now holds at 164 and eventually sneaks back up again to 165. We're going to skip forward just a little bit. Now, you'll see, as I mentioned, this is a very flat route, and the sort of elevation that accumulates in the top of the screen there, where it currently says 23 meters, really only adds about 1 or 2 meters at a time here or there in very small surges. So this race feels, as I said at the start of the video, very attritional. So I go back to my race tactic of trying to sit in the wheel and not do too much. My thinking is, with a group this big, it's going to come down to a big bunch sprint finish. That said, however, I can see that a few guys are maybe getting a bit nervy, a bit twitchy, and are trying to break away. Myself included. Although I'm not trying to break away, I'm just trying to make sure that no one else does. That is exactly what happens here again. So after burning several big matches earlier on, another rider tries to get away. So for some reason, I try and be the hero, and I try and keep up, or try and bridge the gap to bring him back. Now, I succeed in doing so, but I'm leaving myself very empty with over 18 kilometers left to go in this race. We're less than 10 minutes in, and I've already worked way too hard for a race of this duration and this little elevation. It's going to be an aggressive sprint because there's not a lot of climbing to do, so people are probably going to have a lot left in their legs. There we go, another 8 or 9 meters added to the elevation chart there as we now get into the high 30s. And there we are now, nearly 7.5 kilometers gone. So looking back at this video with you now, here live in the commentary, I can see that I'm spending quite a bit of time at the front, like too much time at the front. I should be sat on. Now I'm feeling pretty good at this stage. I do recall thinking, okay, I've given a lot and I've lent a lot to this race so far, but I'm feeling pretty good. But then I keep thinking, well, it's too soon. You're not going to beat 60 riders in a breakaway, solo breakaway. And if anyone decides to get away with you, it's only going to cause the group behind you to try and catch up again. And that proves to be the case. Every time a small group or one or two riders get anything more than a second or two away from the pack, everyone just ups the ante just sort of 10% or so and reels them back in again and absorbs them back into the peloton. As you'll see here, this guy goes off on the front on his own. He's out there for, a minute? And he's reabsorbed back into the group. And then I go, for some reason beyond me, and then I get caught. Now I'm holding onto my power up here thinking, okay, I'm stretching it out. I'm trying to make sure that everyone is on the edge here. But what I'm not realizing is that I too am on the edge myself. So we're just over 10 kilometers into the race now. You can see there's a few little splintered individual riders out the front, but looking at the map on the top right hand corner, there is really and truthfully still one large peloton that's largely stuck together. So it's a very tight race, a very well ridden race by many, maybe not so much by me. The elevation has just sort of snuck up to 53 meters climbed now, so nothing to write home about, and you'll see it sneak up another meter or two here or there over the next couple of kilometers before we then start getting to the rooftop section. We'll just skip forward for just a moment. Here we go. So we're now into 12 kilometers, so about the halfway point of the race, and nothing much has changed. Everyone is obviously using their power-ups as they go under the banner and they stand to gain another one. I'm getting a little bit angsty at this point, realizing that we've still got another 100 meters of climbing to go, which isn't much, but at this point we've done, there we go, hi there, halfway chaps, we've done a little bit less than half the climbing, but we're over halfway through in terms of duration, so I know that I've got a bit of a big effort left to come. So I start sitting in the back of the pack a little bit, thinking, regain your energy, get ready for these climbs. For some reason beyond me, I power up the climb thinking, okay, there's a breakaway going to take place here. It doesn't quite happen like that. We get to the top of the climb and everyone does the same thing. They ease right off the power and they recover on this sort of false downhill section. I say false downhill because it's -2%. You don't get a lot in terms of speed if you're not powering down into at least the first part of any descent. Up another small climb, we're up to just above 80 meters worth of climbing done now, and we've got just a little over 10k left to go. A couple of riders decide to go, and again I surge, I try and keep up, thinking, hey, this could be the point, to make the race happen now, to make everyone else fall apart, and for a little break to go. So 10 kilometers or 9.7 kilometers left to go, and the group is still, again, largely sticking together. No real individual sort of heroes breaking away. Another power up. I'm elated to see that it's the feather power up. However, I do indeed make a boo-boo as we now reabsorb the first of the dropped Cat A riders. So he actually manages to stave off the group for a little bit longer. But we let's go back a little bit here. We hit this rooftop section where we add another couple of meters to the climbing, and for some reason again I power off the front, surge. I don't know why I do this, and then recover, allowing the group to get back on. I've burnt another match. Now, if you just go back a second here, you'll see what I do is I see that the elevation profile in the top right hand corner, or sorry, the gradient in the top right hand corner quickly gets up to 7%. So I'll go ahead and hammer the feather power up, but then you'll quickly see that percentage almost instantly come down again as we crest the top of the rooftop. We get to a flat section and then very quickly on a downhill, and you'll notice that my feather is 1/3 used, so an absolute waste of time, because in just over a kilometer, that sort of last 30-meter climb, which again is nothing to write home about, but at this point I have burnt so many matches, that climb is coming. So a couple of other riders do indeed use their feather power-ups as well, which gives me some reassurance that perhaps I've not done the wrong thing, but it quickly becomes apparent that I have as we hit another 7% section, and I dig deep and try and give it my all. My heart rate now up over 170 beats per minute. But these little climbs are little splurges, little pushes of power. So it forces you to really drive and drag through those pedals to give the watts your all, and then you're trying to recover again, but of course people behind you are too scared to get dropped, so they are powering on, and then sort of gaps and breaks happen again. We see one rider has got away. If you look at the map on the top right hand side, let's speed up the footage again. So what happens next is, as I mentioned, at about 18 or so kilometers, we get to the climb of Notes. Let's say it's a climb. It's just the only longest uphill gradient of the Neokyo crit course, and I am praying at this point, regretting having used my feather power up. Let's speed up the footage, and here is what happens. I do dig deep. I'm doing over 5 watts per kilo. I'm holding on to the group, but you'll see what happens here. Give it a second. I go through under one barrier, under 2 barriers, and at the 3rd barrier coming up here, maybe it's the 4th one, I can't quite recall, but I just start to get dropped. My power is actually going too low, but I just, at that point, capitulate. Absolutely capitulate. Everyone else powers on, and I sort of realize I'm empty. I have nothing. My heart rate is up near 180. We haven't got much of the course left to go. I do try and dig deep at this point. I think, hey, just hold them at sort of 5 or 6 seconds. Do a little sort of mini sprint on the downhill. Maybe you can get some momentum, some speed. Maybe the gradient will permit a super tuck. Of course, it doesn't. It just doesn't. I sort of try and recover here, thinking, okay, get to the flat, and then just time trial your way back on. But with a group of this size, it just doesn't happen. It's never going to happen, really. It's never going to happen. So the race now becomes a bit of an individual effort to try and catch the one guy in front of me and to try and hold off the guys behind me. All I'm looking to try and do here is a little bit more power in terms of watts per kilo than the one guy in front, get in front of him, and then hold him off. There is no way that in just over 4 kilometers I'm going to make up 13 seconds, especially when that guy Silviu and Nakatsu in front of him are riding in a small group. I'm going to have to do another 1.5 per kilo more than they are just to try and stand a chance of catching up with them. And with now 3.5 kilometers left to go, that isn't likely. So again, I'm now just looking at the watts per kilo of the rider behind me, T9981, that's a mouthful, and just trying to make sure that my watts per kilo remains either on par or just slightly above or slightly higher than his. 3 kilometers left to go. I'm using my feather power up, thinking just try and take the edge off of this. I know I've got no more than sort of about 7 or 8, maybe 10 meters at best of climbing left to go. I think it's 166 meters of climbing in total. I get another power up. I use it on this 2% section. Again, probably not the optimum time to use it, and I'm just eyeballing the watts per kilo of the rider behind me. Let's skip forward a little bit. So we are going to go forward to about a kilometer left to go, and I do think to myself, well, can I save some face here? Like, can I maybe try and grind something out for the last sort of maybe 600-700 meters? So if I speed the footage up again, you'll see that I do try and increase my watts, my power just a little bit, try and put a little bit more time into Bilu, the guy behind me, but ultimately I am empty at this point. So that is pretty much the race. Let's just roll over the finish line. There we go. So you'll see that I ended up in 33rd place out of 60. Not my best race at all. However, sometimes, just sometimes, that is the way that things go. So if I rate myself in terms of power, it was actually pretty decent. In fact, at the end of that race screen there, my race power, or my average watts, was 287 watts for the 35.5 minute duration. So that's actually pretty okay for me at the moment. It's not my best. I've done well in excess of 4.4 watts per kilo for similar distances and similar durations in the past. But where I am at the moment in my training and my recovery from illness and then illness and holiday and disruption and a house move is pretty much okay. So I'm not complaining about that. It's an upward trend, which is all I can really ask for at the moment. But racecraft, that's where I'll rate myself like a 4 out of 10. I did okay to catch the break. I maybe sort of needlessly used that matches. I should have just depended more on the power of the peloton, the power of the group. I should have had more faith that the other riders in the race weren't going to let that solo guy get away, especially not 2.5 kilometers into the race. But I think I was just too nervous with so many riders taking to the start line, I think I was desperate to get the win. And the desperation just sort of overrode my senses, just threw all of my racecraft, all of my experience out the window. And I do consider myself to be a very experienced Zwift racer. So, disappointed in my racecraft, pretty happy with my power numbers, it's got to be said. So, yeah, let's say a C- overall on that effort. So that's it for this mini race recap. I hope you're enjoying this shorter format. Please do tune into my next live stream, which is going to be on Friday lunchtime. I will see you then. Cheers for sticking around. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do give this video a like and subscribe. And if you hit the bell button as well, that would be pretty amazing. Otherwise, you can find me over on Instagram at That's Berkshire Cyclist. And if you really want to support the channel, head on over to hijustride.com. Pick up some of my cool merch. See you around. Thanks, guys. Peace. Good vibes only. See you soon.